and welcome to The Apex, a weekly conversation with the titans and tastemakers of the automotive world. Our guest this week is passionate car enthusiast, concours judge, market specialist and talented music producer Duccio Lopresto. As the son of one of Italy's leading car collectors, Corrado Lopresto, Duccio has grown up in and around some of the world's finest automobiles and joins us this week to discuss his life in cars and more besides. Duccio, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, guys, and it's a pleasure for me to be your host today, your guest.
Fantastic. So my first question is, what are your earliest memories of automobiles, and when did you really begin to be interested in the cars that you grew up around?
I think I've always been a car guy since I was very, very young. And the very first memory I have is actually being in a Fiat Balilla. I think I was around 4 or 5 years old. And I was together with my father, and that was his very first car that he bought when he was 18, and he personally restored back in the days, back in the 80s or 70s. And I was like 5 years old, and we were participating at this small local rally in the area of Milano. And I remember having so much fun being in the car and doing the regularity races and seeing all these crazy old vehicles. I think that left quite a big mark on me. And after that, many memories. Because as you know, my father has been always passionate about these objects, these cars. So I was kind of his luggage at every kind of event around the world. And I remember going to all the restoration shops with him in Italy, visiting the old masters, and going to all the different classic car events. And I saw the whole development of his passion, which then in turn developed into me.
That sounds like a fantastic childhood. So speaking about the collection, the Lopresto Collection is notable for its many prototypes and cars with special coachwork. So what is the philosophy behind the collection? What cars are your particular favorites, and how do you spend your time looking after it?
The philosophy is quite simple in the sense that my father and me, we have always been passionate about Italian cars, strictly Italian cars, and more specifically, the philosophy of the Lopresto Collection is to really gather all the most important, the most relevant, one-off prototypes and limited edition cars that really defined and changed Italian automotive history. We collect cars from all different eras. We have the very first Lancia from 1907, the very first Isotta Fraschini from 1901, up to the recent Bertone Nuccio prototype done by Bertone in 2008. So I'd say it's much more than a simple collection. It's more like a cultural movement, if I can say so, that started with the idea and vision of my father, and I'm trying to take this vision forward to the next generation. And our philosophy, apart from collecting these very special and unique cars, is also we try to restore and preserve these cars in a way that is unique, but also culturally and historically accurate. We try to preserve as much as possible all the original components of the cars. We try to research as much as possible all the history and the past of these great objects. And so I would say it's just more than a collection. And our philosophy is simple, and I think my father was a visionary, because he started when these cars, these unique, strange prototypes, were not really sought after in the market. People wanted the big Ferraris, the big, important Bugattis, while he was looking for different cars. And he was also lucky in the sense that he could afford, buy them for really, really good prices back in the days.
That's interesting. And so do your tastes differ from your father's in terms of these vehicles, or is there a theme that maybe in the future you'd like to take forward at concourses or restorations? Or do you see yourself very much aligned with what he's been doing so far?
I'd say that our tastes are quite similar because I got a lot of inspiration from him. But obviously, coming from a different generation and having my own perspective on this world, I'm probably more attracted to younger cars as well. Even though I love cars from the 40s, the 30s, and so on. I tend to be also, as my little personal cars, I don't mind if they're not Italian. I own also a Golf MK2 from the 80s, but I wouldn't consider that a car of the Lopresto Collection. But I try to be more flexible, but when it comes to the Lopresto Collection, the brand, that remains the focus. So only Italian prototypes, unique cars.
Mm-hmm. So. And speaking of those, I think one of the wildest restorations I've seen is your Alfa Romeo Giulietta SZ Coda Tronca Prototipo, which was given a half and half restoration. It makes for some extraordinary photos. What was the story behind that particular restoration?
Yeah, that car is very special as it's the prototype of the Alfa Giulietta SZ Coda Tronca, and as you know very well, this car really was a revolution in terms of Italian design and racing as well, because it's this design allowed Alfa cars to be much faster and much more aerodynamic. So this allowed Alfa Romeo to win more races and to be also more commercially successful. So this is the very actual car that Zagato took, starting from an Alfa Romeo SZ Coda Tonda. This is the car that they took and modified into a Coda Tronca version, which is longer, has a longer nose, and is lower. And then the back was cut, as the name suggests. So this car was found in Philadelphia. It was kind of abandoned in a barn. This American collector bought it back in the 70s and kept it in a garage for like 30 years. So a very good friend of us, Paolo Di Taranto, who works for Zagato, found the car and called straight away my father, who immediately bought the plane ticket, went to the US and brought the car back home. Wow. So looking at the car, you could see that the car was kept in very, it was full of rust, full of dust, full of, dirt. But the condition, the actual conditions of the paint, of the interior, of the mechanics, of the metal, they were actually quite good, So my father decided to, starting from one side of the car, not to restore it, but he started to preserve the conditions of the vehicle with the techniques that he got from the fine art restoration. So, because he's been, always passionate about fine art. And so we decided to restore, but actually we preserved one part of the vehicle, which is the clean part that you see, which is white, and leaving the other side as it was when we found it in the barn. And this was obviously a provocation because we wanted to. This car was supposed to be at Villa d'Este in 2016, as you know, is a Concours d'Elegance. So my father said, okay, I'm going to register the car there and let's see what they think. Their reaction was actually, guys, we love it. Please show it at the event. And when we went there and explained the idea that this car should, showcase our techniques of restoration and preservation in classic cars, which should be very similar to fine art restoration, then we got this UNESCO FIFA recognition, which is timeless. Yes.
Yeah, that's incredibly interesting, treating it as a kind of historical object. And I think most people would agree who are listening that I don't think anyone's really ever seen something like that before. So moving on to your own personal tastes, I've noticed that on your Instagram, there's maybe for someone of your generation, a surprising lack of supercars, modern Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and many more Alphas and Fiats. So do I take from that the older cars are just more special for you than the pinnacle of modern, hyper-advanced automobiles?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. I think we're talking about really two different things. So on one side, we have new cars, which are examples of engineering, are example of new developments in technology and so on. I worked for Lamborghini for a bit, so I could see how the marketing departments, the engineering departments, and so on, they work to achieve really year after year the best performance and obviously the best sales for the company. On the other side, we talk about art, in my opinion, because classic cars are a completely different story. They are cultural art pieces in motion, I like to say. They offer a different experience. They are much more difficult to use and to maintain, but at the same time, you kind of you feel this soul of these objects, and I think that's what attracts me the most. Because I love art, I love beauty in every form. So I find this beauty mostly in classic cars and not in modern cars. Although there are examples of modern cars which are surely interesting and will be potential collectibles in the future.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think that a lot of modern supercar manufacturers, they appeal to that sense of the aesthetic and something more than just a car, to varying degrees of success, I suppose. And the buyers of those automobiles are hoping that one day this carbon, beautiful thing that they've just spent a lot of money on might be held in the same esteem as those older, more classic cars.
Yeah, exactly.
So speaking of the future, you've been described as one of the leading names in a younger generation of car collectors and enthusiasts. And this is a question we've asked other interviewees from the space before. How do you think we can bring younger people into the car collecting world to preserve the collector, the restoration hobby and pastime? Do you think there's a risk that if we don't, the market could suffer?
Yeah, very difficult question. I mean, it's we live in a very particular period of time, apart from COVID, I mean, in terms of where we are in 2021. And classic cars are surely at risk in the world that we live in because, with electrification, with new regulations and various fears for the health of our planet, cars will be electric and so on. So we, us that we love these classic cars from this part of the world, we need to share the message, first of all, and let these people know that classic cars exist, first of all, and they represent a very important part of culture. And talking about the younger generations, I think that we need to make this world much more inclusive, so less exclusive and more fun, more dynamic. Because I think younger people, they are attracted to the experience, they're attracted to something that let them be part of it, while the status of this world today is a little bit too old school, in my opinion. So if you go to a concours, it's always like only a few people can get in. If you go to Pebble Beach or Villa d'Este, at the end, the protagonists are just a few. And for young people to be more involved, there should be kind of less elite, more fun, more cultural promotion, because at the end, culture is something that aggregates and gathers people together. And in this context, I think also social media are playing a fundamental role to share the message and to make it also accessible to people that don't know anything about cars. So to conclude, surely there is a risk, but I'm quite positive because I see a lot of good movements in social media and at events, also among young people.
Yeah. So just on that topic of fun, I'm just wondering what kind of cars you'd pick from the Lopresto Collection, which to you symbolize that kind of cool, sort of fun vibe that would pulls people towards them?
Yeah, a very nice question. I mean, difficult for me to choose because I really love all of them. So it's always like, okay, when my father or we get like offers to buy one of our cars, we're like always, oh my God, no, please, Dad, don't sell that one. It's so nice.
It's like someone offering to like buy one of your children. You're like,
yeah,
no,
exactly. So yeah, very difficult. But talking about different topics, if we say fun, like the most fun car, I think is the Auto Bianchi A112 prototipo by Pininfarina, which surely represents a kind of younger vibe in the 70s, car made for the beach. It remained only a prototype, but it's just so cool for that period of time. If we talk about beauty, I think the Giulietta SS Bertone prototipo, which is just an example of pure beauty in terms of aerodynamics and proportions and so on. And then I would say for innovative design, I would choose the Lancia Florida two-door coupe by Pininfarina.
So are those cars that you often find yourself taking people out in or introducing to friends who might maybe not know much about the world, but you see that they're still kind of, they get interested by it just by taking a ride?
Yeah, exactly. And the good thing about all of our cars is that there is a huge story behind. So it's not like, okay, we're driving a very cool, expensive Gullwing, but it's like, okay, we're driving the car that introduced this kind of design aspect or introduced this engineering thing that was, revolutionary for the time. So it's always like there's a huge story behind that we like to share a lot. We're really open with our collection, as you can see from social media and the events. Because I think it's really important to share these messages, especially to the younger generation.
That's very cool. And I mean, obviously hearing you talk, you're incredibly knowledgeable about all of these cars. And some listeners might not be aware that you're also one of the youngest Concours judges on the circuit. What drew you to the judging specifically? I think one of the kind of comments that someone might make is that judging is often regarded as an older man's game when it comes to these prestige events. What led you to it?
Yeah, I'm one of the youngest judges, and I'm just learning a lot. And for me, it's a great learning curve. And the very first time I was asked to participate in a concours as a judge, it was actually at Pebble Beach. So it was like, okay, wow, you're starting straight away from the top. I was not a real judge in the sense that I was a kind of a junior apprentice judge. But still, it's like, wow, to start there, you have big responsibilities. And I need and want to thank Raul San Giorgi, who is an experienced judge there, senior judge for since 25 years. And I was obviously accepted straight away, even though I was a bit nervous because I was 26 the first time. Now I'm 28. And I think I accepted because there is simply a lot of learning about these cars. So when you go there, I always saw it from the other perspective of the collector showing the car. So being there as a judge, you have a big responsibility. You need to study in details all the cars, the manufacturers. There's so much to study and to learn. And that was just incredible, as a person working in the classic car world and wanting more experience, I think is the best thing to do. And also, you meet a lot of great personalities. I don't know, just to mention a few, like Nick Mason or Charles March and Derek Bell. I mean, incredible people who are judges, fellow judges. And you travel the world. So I think it's one of the coolest things you can do as a young person. So I hope that more younger people are included as judges. And because the average age is quite high, to be honest, is 60 plus. So
when you're looking at one of these cars, are there any kind of specific Duccio Lopresto points that you like to look out for?
You mean in the cars that we judge?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's always difficult because, like, if you go to Pebble Beach, you have the kind of the Pebble Beach judging standard. Then there is the ICJAG International Judge Standard. I think that as a person who's learning about judging, the most important thing is not to focus so much into the details. Otherwise, you kind of miss the entire beauty of the car. You know, the car. If the car has a few mistakes, but it's original and looks good, and that's the important thing. Then obviously, for me, the most important thing, as for the Lopresto Collection cars, has to be completely original, well restored, well maintained, also used, because cars are meant to be driven, so it doesn't need to be like perfect. But yeah. And then there are two schools of judging. Like in Villa d'Este, is more about the beauty, while in Pebble Beach is about more the perfection of restoration. I mean, in between, let's say.
That's really interesting. I think quite a few people listening will have had no experience of judging at all. So that's a really interesting insight. I think another insight we're particularly interested in here is I know that one of your major pursuits is making electronic dance music, and you've actually released a number of records. That seems a world away from classic cars. So is there a hidden connection or a kind of aesthetic we're missing here?
I love music, and I love electronic music and dance music since forever. Actually, the first time I went to London, I got my first experience with electronic music, like the serious one, and I just fell in love into it because I feel this raw and tribal aspect of house music and techno music, which I think is really unique, and the fact that has always been kind of regarded as the kind of underground music, for not for everybody, but now is getting appreciation. I think, yes, I see a big connection between cars and music, classic cars and music. First of all, as I said before, I'm really attracted to beauty and art in general. And I think that music is really one of the best expressions of art that a man can use. They represent, the classic cars and music represent beauty and culture in their own way. So I think that loving these two words, they're completely different, but at the same time, there are some common systemic, uniqueness and things that are common to those. So, yeah.
I think because I fall into the category of loving that music as well. And I think there's something about that euphoria that you get from a good song that is universal. It reminds me of when you see a fine piece of engineering or a car that turns up and everyone who looks at it is just, buoyed up by it because they might not know anything about cars or they might not know anything about music, but they know it's good when they see it.
Yeah. Exactly.
That always strikes me as what's appealing.
Exactly. You said it. I mean, it's universal. Even a person, I think it's universal, but for those who appreciate and understand beauty in general. I think this is the core point, as you said.
So that's great. So we've got some quick fire questions to end with. So the first one of those is, what has been your singular greatest driving experience?
Okay, easy, because for sure it was the Mille Miglia. The Mille Miglia is really the greatest driving experience I've ever done in my life. First time with my dad driving the Alfa 1750 Aprile one-off, which is a pre-war car, and the second time with my girlfriend Francesca driving a Cisitalia 202 post-war. So Mille Miglia is the best.
Yeah, that's a great choice, and I think you share that with David Gandy, who was our previous interviewee, actually. So the second question is, just returning to the music very quickly, it's what musicians or songs would feature in your ultimate driving playlist? And you don't have to give us a whole album, but maybe just one or two that you would put on.
Yeah, I think I would start with Miles Davis and a bit of jazz. But then I'd switch to J Dilla, a bit of hip hop. Then I really like when we talk about techno, Robert Hood. And then let me think. Fortet is another great musician that I really love and appreciate. And then my music, of course.
Yes, I love the idea of all of these tracks coming out of an old Alfa Romeo or something,
exactly.
as it sort of crawls by, with lovely engine noise in the background. And the final question is, if you had to rescue one car from the family collection from a fire, which one would it be? And I know this is a painful, very painful question, but maybe we can give you two.
Okay, two. No, one is my personal Fiat Panda 4x4 Val d'Isère.
Interesting. Oh, very interesting.
Because, I tell you why. I mean, obviously it's not a rational choice, but it's the very first car that I bought with my own money. I was 18 and I was looking for a Panda 4x4 and I found this incredible limited edition Panda. Only 300, I think, were made. So, with my savings, I bought it and I still have it completely preserved and perfect. So it's my little Panda. Other than that, as talking more seriously, I think the Alfa SZ Coda Tronca that won the UNESCO recognition because of its historical and cultural importance for the automotive world. That has to be preserved like the Mona Lisa, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Well, that's a wonderful answer. So Duccio, thank you very much for joining us this week. That was a really fascinating discussion, and I'm looking forward to more driving playlists from you in the future. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Thank you guys, and it's been a pleasure.